Fisherman pulled Coffin from water. His face went pale when he opened it. Samuel Okorie was drowning in bills. His wife needed surgery. His children faced expulsion. For weeks, his nets came up empty. Then one morning, in waters Fisherman avoided, his line went tight and refused to move. He pulled until his hands burned. What surfaced beside his boat was not a catch. It was a coffin. And inside, it waited a fortune that could either save his family or ruin him. Before we continue, if this is your first time watching one of our videos, we'd love for you to hit that subscribe button. Your support means the world to us, and it helps us bring you even more powerful stories. Now, let's begin. Samuel Okorie woke before the alarm because the room felt wrong. His wife lay on her side, one hand pressed to her ribs, breathing shallow and uneven. He stood still, listening, counting each breath the way nurses had taught him. When she finally shifted, he released his grip on the bedframe and reached for his shirt. Outside, the dock boards were damp. He walked slower than usual, saving energy. Fuel was low. Ice was half a bag. He checked the nets, even though he knew the answer. They came up clean. Not torn, just empty. He rinsed them anyway. Habit mattered when hope did not. At the harbor office, a notice fluttered against the door. Tuition reminder. Final date bolded. He folded it small and slipped it into his pocket like a sharp object. Two men nearby talked without lowering their voices. One said the sea had gone cold early. The other said some people were cursed. They did not look at Samuel, which felt worse. He pushed off alone. The engine coughed, then settled. His hands shook as he tied the lines. He had fished these waters since he was a boy. He knew the currents by feel. That morning, nothing felt familiar. The sun climbed, then stalled behind thin cloud. He drifted, watched birds pass him by. By noon, he counted costs instead of fish. Medicine first, then power. Food could wait. His phone buzzed. A missed call from the clinic. He turned it face down and kept working. On the way back, he paused near the edge of the safe route. Beyond it lay jagged water locals avoided. Boats had vanished there. Nets too. He cut the engine and listened to the slap of waves against the hull. His jaw tightened. Going home empty would not stop anything. He restarted the engine and turned the bow toward the rocks. He thought about the night before. The kitchen light flickered while he sorted envelopes. He lined them by urgency, not date. His wife watched from the chair, fingers worrying the fabric of her sleeve. She asked if the pain pills were due. He nodded and poured water with a steady hand. When the lights went out for a second time, he did not curse. He fixed the switch and sat with her until sleep came. Back on the water, he checked the compass twice. A gull screamed overhead, then went quiet. He felt the boat roll and corrected without thinking. Sweat ran into his eyes. He wiped it away with the back of his hand and scanned the surface for signs he had missed. Foam traced the rocks ahead. He slowed, measured distance, and made a choice that tightened his chest. At the dock behind him, someone laughed. The sound carried and faded. Samuel did not turn around. He leaned forward, eased the throttle, and crossed the line. The water went quiet. The water changed as soon as he crossed. The color darkened, the surface tightening like skin pulled too hard. Samuel cut the engine and let the boat drift. He did not want the noise. He wanted control. He reached for the net with slow hands, checking knots, testing weight. His shoulders ached as he cast. The line sank fast, faster than it should have. He waited. The boat rocked once, then again. The line twitched, not the quick pull of a fish. This was steady, heavy, deliberate. He wrapped the rope around his palm and leaned back. The boat shifted toward the rocks. He swore under his breath and loosened the line, then pulled again. His boots slid on the wet deck. He caught himself on the rail and laughed once, sharp and short, like the sound surprised him. The line went tight, too tight. The rope burned. He smelled it before he felt it. Samuel braced his foot against the bench and pulled with his whole body. Whatever was below did not move. It dragged him instead. The bow dipped. Water sloshed over the edge. His chest hammered. He untied the rope and let it run. watching coils spill across the deck. He stood there breathing hard, eyes locked on the water. "Let it go," he told himself. The thought came fast and clear. He ignored it. He tied off again, this time lower, closer to the deck. He stripped off his shirt and shoes. His hands trembled as he tested the knot. He looked once at the shoreline, at the empty stretch of land where no one watched. He went over the side without shouting. The cold hit like a slap. His breath left him. He forced it back and kicked down, following the line. The water pressed in from all sides. Shapes blurred. His fingers brushed something smooth, then rough. Wood, old, swollen. He wrapped his arms around it and kicked, legs burning, lungs screaming. He surfaced, gasping, hauled himself onto the boat, and rested his forehead on the deck. The object broke the surface slowly, resisting, then yielding. A long shape emerged, edges squared, metal bands dark with rust. It bumped the hull with a hollow sound. Samuel stared at it, water dripping from his hair onto the planks. A coffin lay beside his boat. He did not touch it at first. He sat back, heart racing, and listened. Waves, wind, nothing else. He reached out and pressed a finger to the lid. Solid, heavy, real. He checked the horizon again. Still empty. He tied the coffin alongside and began the slow pull back, muscles shaking with every meter. Halfway in, his phone rang. He flinched and nearly dropped the rope. He let it ring until it stopped. The screen lit with a message from the clinic. He did not read it. He secured the coffin, wiped his hands on his shorts, and turned the boat toward home, the weight beside him changing the way the hull cut the water. Samuel docked after dark. He killed the engine early and drifted in, guiding the boat by memory. The coffin knocked softly against the hull. Each sound felt louder than it was. He waited before tying off, scanning the pier, the road, the single light near the bait shed. No movement, no voices. He worked fast. He rolled the coffin onto a tarp, muscles screaming, then dragged it across the boards, pausing when his breath came short. A car passed on the road above. Headlights swept the dock and moved on. He froze until the sound faded, then pulled again, inch by inch, into the storage shed behind his boat. Inside, the air smelled of salt and old rope. He shut the door and slid the bolt home. His hands shook so badly he sat on an upturned crate and waited for them to settle. He pressed his palms together, felt the burn where the rope had rubbed skin raw. He lifted the lid enough to look, not all the way, just a crack. Bones stared back, pale, ordered, a skull tilted, as if listening. Around it lay metal shapes stacked with care, bars dulled by age, jewelry pressed flat, stones dark but intact. Nothing glittered, nothing invited touch. The sight made his stomach tighten, not with greed, but with fear. He closed the lid and leaned against the wall, breathing through his nose, slow and shallow. This was not something to sell. This was not something to hide forever. He understood that much. The sea had not given him a gift. It had handed him a problem that could swallow him whole. At home, his wife slept lightly. He washed his hands at the sink, scrubbing until the water ran cold. He sat at the table and listened to the house. Pipes clicked. A neighbor's radio murmured through thin walls. He thought of the coffin sitting alone, of what it meant, of who would come if word spread. The next morning, he went back to the shed. He checked the lock twice. He moved the tarp, lifted the lid again, longer this time. He noticed carvings along the inner edge. Lines and symbols worn smooth. Not local, not familiar. He lowered the lid with care. A fisherman stopped him later at the dock and asked why he had come in late. Samuel said the engine ran rough. The man nodded and said these waters were changing. Samuel agreed and kept his eyes on his hands. By afternoon, the clinic called again. He answered. Surgery was needed sooner than planned. He thanked them and said he would call back. When he hung up, his decision felt heavy but clear. That night, he sat alone in the shed and dialed a number he had avoided all his life. Authorities. His voice stayed steady as he spoke. He gave his name, his location. He said he had found something that did not belong to him. When the call ended, he rested his head against the coffin lid. He did not pray. He waited. The officials arrived before sunrise. 2 trucks. No sirens. Men and women who moved with quiet purpose. They asked Samuel to walk them through everything, from the line tightening to the moment he made the call. He spoke plainly. No flourish. No guesses. They listened, wrote, nodded, and asked him to repeat dates and times. They photographed the shed, the dock, the boat. They measured the coffin where it lay. When they opened it fully, one woman exhaled slowly and stepped back. Another pointed at markings along the rim and said a name Samuel had never heard. A third closed the lid again and thanked him for not touching anything else. Word traveled anyway. A neighbor asked why trucks were parked by the water. Someone said it was drugs. Someone else said a body. Samuel stayed home and kept the door locked. He sold his spare nets for cash and bought fuel only once that week. The clinic called. Approval would take time. They said weeks. He said his wife did not have weeks. He met a lawyer in a small office that smelled of paper and coffee. The man spoke carefully about custody, jurisdiction, and risk. He said doing the right thing did not protect you from stress. Samuel nodded. He asked one question. Would his wife get help? The lawyer did not promise. He explained, process. Days stretched. Researchers came. Then more. They brought maps and books and spoke in low voices. They traced symbols and compared photos. They said the burial matched a lost royal transit, likely pushed off course centuries ago. They said governments would argue, museums would claim, time would pass. Samuel sold his boat. He handed over the keys and watched another man walk away with his life's work. The money covered the surgery deposit. He signed the papers with a steady hand and went straight to the hospital. He sat by the bed and held his wife's fingers while machines hummed. When she woke after surgery, he told her he would explain everything later. Outside the room, a man in a suit waited. He said compensation was likely. Not fast, not guaranteed, but likely. Samuel asked if he had done wrong. The man said no. He said most people would not have called. That night, Samuel walked back to the dock alone. The shed stood empty now. The coffin was gone. He rested his hands on the rail and felt the familiar ache. He had nothing left to sell. He had made his choice. All that remained was waiting. The waiting ended months later, not with celebration, but with paperwork. Letters arrived first, then meetings, then signatures that took entire afternoons. The artifacts moved under protection, sealed away from rumor and reach. Samuel watched from a distance as his part in the story narrowed to a name on a form. The compensation came last, earned slowly, measured carefully. When the number was spoken, he did not react. He asked what would happen next. The answer was simple: life. He paid the hospital in full. He cleared the tuition balances one by one, reading each receipt twice before setting it down. His wife walked without pain again. She cooked small meals and laughed at the wrong moments. His children stopped calling with careful voices. Samuel did not return to the graveyard waters. He bought a smaller boat later, used, reliable, nothing that drew attention. He fished close to shore and came home before dark. Men at the dock nodded again. Some asked questions. He answered only what was needed. He started the foundation quietly. No speeches, just help where help was thin. Fuel cards, net repairs, medical rides for the old men who never complained. People noticed over time. Not because he announced it, but because the pressure eased where it used to crush. One evening, he stood at the edge of the dock and watched the tide roll in. The water looked the same as it always had, calm, indifferent. He understood it better now. The sea had not saved him, it had tested him. Samuel turned toward home as the light faded, shoulders loose, steps steady, carrying forward a future built not on what he found, but on what he chose to do when it mattered most. If this story reminded you that one decision can change everything, carry that lesson with you. Do the right thing when it costs you. That choice shapes the future more than luck ever will. Subscribe for more real stories about pressure, courage, and quiet victories.